everyone, this is Jay Harris coming to you from Tom's Trading Room. I'm going to go over in this video presentation how to save a trade, but more specifically, when you adjust your risk graph lines and you zoom into your risk graph so that you can see your profit and loss in a little bit more clear picture, there are times where if that does not get saved, when you go back to review that saved trade, the risk graph has widened back out and it makes it tougher to view your profit and loss. So we're going to save the trade, but with the saved adjusted risk graph limits. Here's the process. Let's go to the Options tab, click on Option Chains. When the page populates, make sure you change it to the stock symbol that you want. We already have the SPY in there. That's what we'll use in this presentation. Over on the expiration months analyzed, let's click on the boxes that we do not want on the analysis. So I've clicked the check marks to remove them from Feb 15 week 1 and 2, and I'm just leaving the check mark under Feb 15. Click Update, and the page will refresh, and you can go down and start analyzing the options for that week's expiration only. At the time of the recording, we were at 204.18 on the SPY, so I'm just going to click the strike closest to the stock price. That's the Feb 15 204 calls. Click on the number 1, left click on that to solidify the one in the box, and go up to your Risk Graph plus plus button and click on that. So we're bringing up an option trade on the SPY for the February, it looks like the 204 calls. When this page populates, you see that trade information up there like normal. You see the chart and the risk graph like normal. But as you can see, that the risk graph stock limits are pretty wide. The lower limit is at 102, the upper limit is at 307. So we want to zoom in on that risk graph, but not only zoom in on it, but save that risk graph in the zoom fashion that we choose, so that whenever we bring up this saved trade going forward, it will do so with the risk graph set to the blown up view that we set right now. Pop on down to your risk graph settings. Now remember, you can go ahead and put in your trade commentary and save all that information, but we're going to focus on the risk graph settings here. The lower limits we're going to set at a support area of 200, and we'll tab over to the upper limit and make that 206. Now remember, you're doing the risk graph settings, so let's apply those changes to your risk graph settings by going over here to the risk graph settings actions and clicking on risk graph plus plus. This will reset the page. It will still be at the risk graph plus plus, but now you're going to see that the risk graph itself, and I'm scrolling down to it right now, has been zoomed in. So the lower limit at 200 and the upper limit at 206 has been set, and that's the view we want to keep. Not only just now, but in the future when we bring up the saved trade, we want to make sure that we keep it in that zoomed look right there. How do you do that? Well, let me show you a couple things first. Right down here it says risk graph chart limit actions. It currently says using default risk graph limits. We want to do something to change it so where we can make an adjustment in that box there. So to do that, scroll up to the top, and under your current trade actions, left click on the blue save button. When that is done, the page will repopulate. It will have all the same information there that you like, but it will change that risk graph actions button down below, and we can make our changes there. Everything's the same. The zoomed in risk graph is right there as you like to see it. Down here now, for risk graph chart limit actions, you can now click on the blue button save. But before I do that, let me show you first what happens a lot of times. If we do not click that save, we go up here now a day later, 5 days later, 2 weeks later, and we highlight trades, save trades, and bring up the saved trades. Here we're looking at that specific line item. When we click check a trade for trade tools and we click the risk graph plus plus button, when this page reloads, we're going to have all the information that we had when we originally saved this, except the risk graph lines are going to zoom back out. Now to me, that's kind of a pain, and I want to make sure that my zoomed in risk graph view stays the same whenever I want to analyze this going forward. Here's how you do that. And we could have done this originally, but I wanted to show you that if you didn't do this step that I'm going to show you, that's what happens. So now, when you've clicked save, you come back down to this part of the page, and under risk graph chart limit actions, you're going to have to make sure it says the lower that you want and the upper that you want, and then click save. The page will again go through the process of resetting itself, and it'll come back up with all the same information that you had before. It's going to have the zoomed in risk graph view that you want. And to confirm now that this has taken place, you'll see that the risk graph chart limit actions has the box that now says using saved risk graph limits. And your two choices there are to update the saved risk graph limits or restore them to the default settings. Another way that you can confirm this is when you go back up to your Trades tab, highlight over Save Trades and click on Save Trades one more time. Find that trade. Here it is. Click on Check a Trade for Trade Tools. Click on your Risk Graph ++ button. And when the page populates, it's going to show you everything that you had saved originally. And it's going to have the risk graph in the zoomed in format that you set. So now you don't have to worry about going back in a day or two or a week or two later and seeing the zoomed out risk graph and having to go through that process of resetting it in the zoomed in feature that you like. It's done and it's set, and you can go about analyzing this in a much more cleaner and clearer fashion. I hope you find that helpful. Look for me at support@tomgentile.com and more videos to come. Thanks folks. Bye now.